This is Ray Stokes on the second day of July 1985 in the oral history section of the TCOM Health Sciences Library. Today I'm fortunate to have a good friend of mine, a former boss of mine too, I might say, in our interview. He is was the first Vice President for Medical Affairs for the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. He is Dr. Gus Ferré, and we call him Dr. Gus for short. So we'll be referring to Dr. Gus Ferré, who is my guest in my office here today. And we're going to try to pick Dr. Ferré's brain for the time that he was the Vice President here at TCOM. Dr. Gus Ferré, administrator, educator, a philosopher, minister, will be setting or was setting the pace. What I'm doing now is really quoting part of a news story that ran in a special edition of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on the last day of August 1975, which was about a day before officially TCOM became a part of the North Texas system. So I will continue here with reading this particular section of the biography of Dr. Ferré. He will be setting, or was at that time, setting the pace for the administration of the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine during the coming year as Vice President for Medical Affairs. Dr. Ferré, Vice President for Academic Affairs at North Texas State University since 1971, requested a one-year leave of absence from his NTSU post to serve as the Chief Administrative Officer at the medical school. Quote, "We are fortunate to have such a capable person as Dr. Ferré, who can accept broader responsibilities during this critically important transition period for NTSU and TCOM," said C.C. Nolan, president of both institutions. All right, Dr. Ferré, I've given a quote there of that little profile about you and some of your contemporaries at that time. You, of course, have been in Fort Worth a number of years. You were at TCU in the philosophy department before you went to North Texas. But Dr. Ferré, I am happy to have the opportunity to discuss some of your memoirs as a top administrator here at TCOM in 1975 to about 1977 or 78. Would you kind of relate some of the details about the role assigned to you by President Nolan when TCOM became identified with TCOM, and what was your specific assignment?
Ray, there are two dates. One is when North Texas State University unofficially was related to Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. And
that dates back to about 1971, I presume. We'll start from there then, if you would.
Right after the new year of 1972, President Nolan, or Jitter as we called him, came to me and suggested that North Texas State University would be benefited by having a professional school related to it. He suggested that if we had a medical college, that this would help both the medical college and North Texas State University. He proceeded to ask me if we thought that we could identify with Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine and provide for them certain services as far as North Texas State University was concerned, with helping both the image of North Texas State University and Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. My first reaction was one of surprise. I'd planned to give full time to my position as Vice President for Academic Affairs, which took more time than I had at that time. But Jitter was rather insistent that we have a professional school related to North Texas State University, and he had had some conversations with Professor Sylvie and Dr. Lubel that gave some indication that it might be possible for North Texas State University to be of help to Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine in terms of basic health science.
Excuse me for interrupting, but could you clarify Dr. Sylvie?
Dr. Sylvie was chairman of our biology department at North Texas State University, and had a tremendous concern for medical education. In fact, the reputation was that no student that he had recommended for medical college had ever been turned down.
Is that right?
To
He didn't
receive
tell
an
me that. I had an
application
interview with
to
Dr.
medical
Sylvie
college, right?
recently, and he didn't mention that. I'm glad to hear that.
He had a fine reputation and tremendous interest in medical education. At that point, it seemed to me a little difficult, but my answer was, as usual to the president, that if the president wanted it, we could do it. But it wouldn't be easy, and it would take considerable amount of time, and we'd have to be careful lest we had too much time allocated to the one or to the other, so that one or the other would suffer by the dual relationship. Jitter said, think about it, and there is a committee going to come up from Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. I want you to meet with them and listen to their proposal and see what you think in terms of our commitment. Dr. Lubel and other members of the committee arrived on the campus, talked about North Texas State University being able to supply leadership in the basic health science, and that maybe the student could spend the first year or the first 2 years up at North Texas State University and then transfer down to Fort Worth for the clinical years. And question mark whether it would be 1 year, year and a half, or 2 years, or depending upon how much basic health science was required at North Texas State University, and then how much would be required here at the college campus at Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. The question that the administrator asked, of course, is how do you fund it? And the question was raised as to the funding. They said they had $100,000 for the basic health science. This seemed like a small amount for the amount that they were asking us to do. And I said there was some serious question whether we could accomplish it for the amount of money involved in terms of the need to professors and equipment and all the things involved in the basic health science department. They came back later, said that they had received word that the state would give them additional funds and they could give us $300,000. This wasn't a great deal either, but we said we would do so, and from that time on, our responsibility was to try to set up a basic health science curriculum that would be acceptable to medical education and also acceptable to the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. It was at this point then that Jitter turned problems over to me, and from that day on, for the next 5 years,
So you have been identified much longer than it shows on the record.
Oh yes, I was identified from the beginning, and
Right.
Jitter just said the details are up to you, and the overall policy belongs to the president. And
So you weren't new to TCOM on September 1, 1975 when we joined the NTSU family.
Oh no, for 4 years I had met with him, and talked with him, and shared with him, and was very well aware of.
Well, you're bound to have some rich experiences that occurred then, in addition to what occurred the 1 year that or 2 years you were actually here officially when we became part of the state system.
Yeah, I think the more difficult problems were before we became affiliated, leading up to the state affiliation,
Right.
our responsibilities were, first of all, to get funding, second, faculty, and third, to get full state approval. And behind all of that, of course, was an adequate basic health science program. We never were interested in North Texas State University in doing the clinical years. That didn't belong to us. It was not our concern.
Right.
It belonged properly with the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine and whatever hospital affiliated with, so that we're concerned stayed with the basic health science department. Now, how to get a curriculum that was acceptable both to the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine and that was acceptable to the standard that we had in mind in terms of correlation between allopathic medicine and osteopathic medicine. We had on our faculty in the biology department a professor that I won't name since I didn't ask for permission to name him,
Right.
but a professor that had been at the University of Texas Medical College and Health Science Center at Galveston, and had taught in that area and was very well acquainted with curriculum and curriculum needs. I met with him a number of times. He was not interested in getting deeply involved, though he later transferred to San Antonio and is with the medical college down there in San Antonio. But he was an invaluable source of information and of help of putting a curriculum together. Now, this is no criticism of the curriculum that they had at Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, but it was limited by the limited number of faculty that they had and the responsibility of the faculty that they had to do many things outside of their field in order to cover a wide range of needs of preparation of the student. So that when we began, it was our experience talking with Jitter and President Nolan that if we were going to go into this, let us explore first a few years, and then we can decide whether we want to make a solid commitment, whether we're capable of doing so. And that would depend upon the fact that we want excellence. We said our aim at North Texas State University has been excellence in everything that we try to accomplish. And I say we must also then put the same goal to Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine and try to achieve the best osteopathic medical college that they have functioning in the United States or in the world as far as we were concerned.
Right.
We didn't hesitate to set a high goal. And in our thinking, it would be helpful to the osteopathic profession and also to the students if they had a little broader curriculum than what we noticed when we first looked at the curriculum that they had.
Yeah.
So you can understand that this led to a great deal of give and take in terms of those who protect curriculum and in terms of the faculty that you have available that can teach certain areas, and also the quality of the students you have that are able to handle the material, because now we felt we were upgrading
Right.
in a sense because of the greater demands that are made upon them. My first responsibility then was to try to find faculty who would be willing to teach part-time in the basic health science department, and which was not yet a department and therefore didn't function by itself but was under the biology department.
Right.
And you run into the problems that you have with faculty and with their load and with releases and whatever is involved. But we thought it could be handled, and I have to give a great deal of credit to the faculty in the biochemistry department and in the biology department and in the chemistry department who were willing to understand that this was a challenge, and that this was an experiment at first, and that we maybe could provide a very valuable service to the people in Texas and to the students who were preparing for osteopathic medicine. There was never any attempt to change osteopathic medicine to allopathic medicine, but our aim was to produce the best curriculum that we could and to secure the most qualified faculty members we could, even though the demands may be a little high and a little demanding at first, and then our desire would be to recruit the quality of students that were capable of being able to handle the material that was put to them. So you can understand that at first it took a certain amount of willingness of the students to go along with what now became a little more demanding on them, a little more restrictive of the freedom that they had,
Right.
and a greater amount of time in the basic health sciences, and maybe less time, not less time, but postpone the beginning of the time of the clinical
Right.
experience. Most of them would like to get into the clinical experience as early as possible, and sometimes that's a good idea to do so, but since the campuses were separated, it meant that they would have to postpone any clinical experience till after the basic health science.
Now that condition of the split campus lasted how long, Dr. Ferré?
Up until about 74 and 75, and then when we finally joined together, we still had a split campus, but more and more of it was being moved down to this campus. We were able to buy buildings and renovate them, such as the old hotel that they had here,
Right.
and find space in various areas. Faculty members of who were recruited from the osteopathic profession were willing to come in and teach and so on, that more and more we were able to move the faculty down to Fort Worth and then not move the students down to Fort Worth. First, and here again, a little of this is rusty because I haven't thought about it for a while, but
It's understandable.
those first 2-3 years, it's a little hard to move the students down here. We try to do it by buses and so on, because we didn't want them to lose contact with Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine as being located in Fort Worth and being the mother place and being the place where the basic instruction was going to take place. On the other hand, we couldn't start down here because the faculty was up there, and it was a little hard to move the faculty. It was hard enough to get them to teach, never mind to try to move them down and spend the time back and forth. And we didn't have the resources to do so. We couldn't pay them for the transportation and various things, so that and still come out anywhere near the budget that we first achieved. Against this background, we also saw that there was a tremendous need for buildings, a tremendous need of resources for each student in terms of commitment from the state. So what we began doing then is to lay the groundwork for appealing to the state for letting osteopathic medicine be on a par with allopathic medicine, and that they would reimburse or at least allocate, I guess is the word that I want, allocate funds for osteopathic medical college on the same basis that they allocated funds to the medical colleges that were allopathic. Now, this took time, took many meetings. We met with groups from the coordinating board. We met with groups from the legislative branches. We were fortunate to be appointed to a state committee, chairman of health needs for the state of Texas for the next 10 years. and our report was due in. And
Are you still on that committee?
No, it was from 75 to 85.
Well, you just been off a short time.
That's right, and that gave us a chance then to have a chance of looking at what the needs would be, and whether there was a place, a need for osteopathic medical college in the state of Texas. And obviously, we were very fortunate when they felt that there was that need, and that the osteopathic medical college was dedicated to what we call family practice, and quite often to the rural areas, and that's where the greatest need was in Texas. And since we could identify the greatest need and an opportunity to meet that need, it was.
You might be interested to know that we have 745 graduates now, and about 70% of them are family practice.
It's
about
fantastic.
30% in various other disciplines.
Very good. Dr. Lubel, through all of this, of course, was a tremendous help, and was a guiding person in terms of our conversations and with the people to meet, and so on.
You're referring to one of the founders of the school.
Yes,
Talk about
yes,
Dr.
yes.
Lubel.
An osteopathic
Right.
Profession. Now, all of this then led up to the date that you mentioned, is the coming together. By this time then we realized from 72, 73, and 74, our experiences in those 3 years saw that what we needed was strong leadership, we needed adequate funding, we needed new buildings that could adequately meet the needs that we had hoped for the College of Osteopathic Medicine. And as you recall, to this time we had basically a bowling alley and the hotel that we had bought next door. Now it was out of this background then that we were appointed to serve in the position of Vice President for Medical Affairs and Vice President for Academic Affairs. But it was impossible to give the amount of time necessary to the College of Osteopathic Medicine and serve as Academic Vice President at North Texas State University. So we then asked for a leave of absence for 1 year from North Texas State University, primarily to do two things: secure adequate leadership, adequate funding, and then of course to follow through with what we had started, which was a request to the national funding and state funding for a Med-Ed 1, as we were to call it, building. And so that's what was involved in this responsibility, and that's why the release from being Vice President for Academic Affairs, and my responsibility then, first of all, was to secure a person that I could recommend to be the chief officer at Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, who then would report back to the president of North Texas State University.
Could you relate some experience you may have had in that search?
Well, it was our privilege then of attending, or visiting, I should say, all of the osteopathic medical colleges in the United States at that time.
Yeah, I've been about 6 or 7 now.
Yes, sir. And we did it for two reasons. One, we went once with the understanding of certain osteopathic medical colleges in terms of the building that they had, the equipment that they had, which was primarily to see how they would build differently if they built now, and to see what was the strength of their building and also the weakness of the building. We also went to some allopathic medical colleges, but our primary concern was to the osteopathic medical colleges so that we could see and learn what the strength of their building was and what the weakness of their building was, and hopefully that we could build on the strength and kind of minimize the weakness, of course realizing that we'd have to adjust it to our own. The second was to see and observe the quality of leadership that they had, and to inquire concerning those that might be available to serve as administrative head of Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. I took this trip one summer by myself and spent a considerable amount of time evaluating a number of people who have been recommended, and the name that kept surfacing had to do with Dr. Ralph at Michigan State University. The reason for this was that he was serving as associate dean, and he had the experience of serving at the mother church, if I could say it that way, or
school anyway.
At home, yeah,
Right.
at
Kirksville,
and then he also had the experience of seeing allopathic medicine and osteopathic medicine working side by side.
by his experience in the Air Force.
Yes, and no, at Michigan State University.
Well, yes.
Yeah, because there the basic health sciences was shared by both.
Right.
And that's what we had in mind, was someone who could take the strength of both and not go off on some narrow tangent, but a broad-based education on the basic health sciences, which was what we felt necessary for the clinical years that were to come. Now, I realized full well that you could do it, I suppose, basically in training, but we were concerned with foundation work as an academic institution. That's what North Texas State University was concerned about. Now, Ralph Willard, in my conversations with him, meeting with him, was interested in becoming the head of a emerging College of Osteopathic Medicine. He had a lot of hopes, a lot of dreams, and he
used to facetiously say the Kirksville on the Trinity.
Yeah, very good, very good. And in our conversation with him and with Margaret, we were very much impressed and felt that he would be the one that could lead us in the years ahead. I didn't bring back a number of names, though I did have a number of other names, and it's always difficult to say which one would be the best, but that was my responsibility, and it was so I suggested that he maybe was the one that we should have down here.
Yeah.
And President Nolan was willing to agree with that recommendation, and the board then later agreed, and he became the first year Sir Dean of Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, while I acted as Vice President for Medical Affairs. But he came with the full understanding that after the first year he would be given the chief position, and I would be able to go back to North Texas State University, providing that he showed the type of leadership and quality of leadership that he could handle the situation here at Fort Worth.
Dr. Gus, in that respect, during this transition period, there must have been a number of problems and conditions that you encountered, I'm sure, but could one or more particular problems that did arise during that time that were memorable in your thinking?
Right, there's so many problems that arose that it's hard to identify.
Well, I can think of one problem that you had,
we had
possibly
a problem with students at times,
right,
whether they
right.
were going to run the College of Osteopathic Medicine, or whether the administration had it right, whether we were going to change grades of professors on their complaint, or whether we're going to stay with academic procedure and insist that they provide the quality of work that was necessary, we felt, to certify them to the state that they were qualified practitioners once that they had been graduated from Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine.
And I conclude that regardless of the threat, you held your guns.
There's no question mark about that. I didn't always have the best reputation for being conciliatory, but I really was very open, except that I felt that it was the responsibility of the administration to insist that certain standards be followed, and that obviously we had problems with faculty and with problems with administration, we had problems with fiscal affairs, and we even had problems with the Board of Regents at the time.
Uh-oh.
But we were able to work through each of the problems that we had. We had great support, and I think there never was any question mark that we were going to set high goals, and that our aim was that we would produce one of the finest osteopathic colleges in the world. And that was our aim then, it's our aim now, and I believe that the foundation was laid in that direction, and that gives us a great deal of joy as we see the skyline now with the tremendous buildings that we have here at Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine.
Dr. Gus, do you happen to recall some unforgettable moment or moments that you did experience during your tenure here at TCOM, either some good or maybe some bad that stand out above any others?
Well, they were all great moments. I have a hard time saying that there was some that was more
Well, what would be your
unforgettable,
mountaintop
but I
experience
think
compared to your Valley of Despair experience?
I think the greatest joy I had to see the quality of the incoming students raised. We saw it continually come in with students applying to Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, better prepared, better ready to task, and I would say would compare favorably with those that would apply to allopathic colleges as far as that's concerned. The greatest joy, of course, was to see the class graduate, and especially the class that I thought were troublemakers, and to see that they matured and learned from their experiences, and that they now are contributing factors.
We've had about 3 presidents of the Alumni Association from that particular class, yes. I think.
I believe that they were outstanding people who just wanted so hard to achieve that they were willing to help the administration more than the administration was willing to let them help at that time.
Dr. Gus, you've pretty well answered this question about what particular accomplishment do you feel is credited to your efforts, and I think you probably have expanded on that.
Well, I'm not sure that I can take credit for any of it, really.
Well, you had a finger in the hand, at least.
We did, and we were able to get full state support. I guess to spend the amount of time we did with the state legislature and with the coordinating board and with the Board of Regents fighting so hard to get the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. We didn't do it alone. The osteopathic profession, the leadership here, all contributed, and certainly President Nolan has to be given a great deal of credit for his willingness to keep battling.
Right.
But the details had to be worked out, and the small committee work we had to do, and the grants had to be written, and they had to, one line has to be filled in after another line, and all of that little work had to be done, and we had a great many people who contributed to doing so. But leadership is the key to any institution, and you at least have to get the banners waving, and you got to get the enthusiasm aroused, and to see them falling in line, and to see them taking a hold, and to see them willing to go to bat with you, and to see the accomplishments. Nothing succeeds like success, they say, and one success after another was encouraging. And I think that the greatest joy was the first success when we were funded for Med-Ed 1, and we could see the ground broken, and we could lay plans, and we had everyone consulted about the kind of building we ought to have and the kind of space that they wanted. And then to see it actually being built, and the dream began to become a reality, was really a rewarding sight. Actually, I try to keep out of their way as much as possible, and the more I did so, the better it went. And
well, look, Dr. Gus, in this concluding question, I want you to refrain now from being taciturn or too modest, but actually, for what would you best like to be remembered at TCOM?
I think that the willingness to undertake the union with Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine in terms of the basic health sciences, when it didn't look like there was a chance in the world to have this thing go, that there was $100,000, $300,000. What could you do with that amount? You had a full university to take care of. You had a tremendous need up at the university. We were just getting ourselves our feet on the ground, so to speak, up there, and we had a lot of needs. But then to see that we could take a struggling osteopathic college and be able to provide a service for them that would give an adequate base for their clinical years, and then for the people of Texas to be able to have the services of adequate osteopathic practitioners, doctors in the fullest sense of the word, who could qualify to pass the test that the allopaths pass, and yet who add something extra to medicine. This was the most important at the vision, at the beginning point. We had many there who shook their heads, and many who were willing to say, no way we can do it, wait until it shows more signs of being able to produce. Now, anyone can jump on the bandwagon after you've had a few successes and after you've got the thing underway. But right at the beginning, to be faced with curriculum needs, faculty needs, equipment needs, all kinds of needs, student needs, and be able to put that together so it made some sense, and be able to work together with two institutions without the one swallowing up the other, and to be each able to keep its own independence, and yet each profiting from the strength of the other. Now, that was what we had hoped to accomplish, and I think that's what, at the present time at least, I see that we have accomplished. And there's no question mark that my responsibility was at the beginning, and those first 3-4 years. After those years, well, then others were able to take off and do far better than what I could have done in later years. But each one has its place, and the key is not to stay so long that you outwear your contribution.
Well, you certainly had a significant role in the forming of what we now call TCOM in its present state. Well, we certainly do thank you, Dr. Ferré, for visiting with us today, and I'm happy to renew a friendship that I've had with you down through the years, although I haven't seen much of you in the last 10, but nevertheless, delighted that you could come down from your home in Denton and be with us here at TCOM. and we're very grateful for your coming and being with us today.
Thank
This
you,
is
Ray.
Stokes.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to have these words. You understand, of course, that there are some things that can be said that are not proper to be said at the present time.
Mhm.
And I think we could give a more in-depth insight into some of the problems and some of the things that we had. But I do think that's better waited until some who are so closely involved with it have a chance to
Well, I look forward
look back at the
I
past.
look
right?
forward to your and my lasting long enough for that to take place.
Thank
you
you.
again, Dr. Ferré.
Appreciate it.